The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye where
it's Thursday, April 26th, Friday, April 27th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live from the Great White North, in the Caribou region on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network, WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We're at spacedoutradio.com. Spreaker, don't forget to catch us live on the Fringe FM. We are also live every Monday through Friday on periscope.tv, so you get to check out this face for radio. Also, our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. That's where we store our archives for free for you. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we got a plethora of features for you. Rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read the Encounter online, our news section, my latest blog is in there as well. Don't forget, we got great videos from UFO seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. If you're a supporter of this show, which I know you are, today was a massive, massive day for us. You may remember a couple of months ago, we started a GoFundMe account, and we had some very, very generous listeners. Very generous. And today we took another big step towards a little bit more notoriety out there. I have come to a deal with a good friend of mine who is a businessman in Vancouver. He loves the donations that were given on the GoFundMe account. He loves the fact that Spaced Out Radio has the opportunity to help us grow a real, true business in paranormal talk radio right around North America and the world. He has decided to invest his own money into Spaced Out Radio, and we are, as of tomorrow, going to be starting the plans on the brand new studio. And it's all because of you, listeners. I owe you a giant thank you for jumping on board with Spaced Out Radio. Whether you're listening live in the chat rooms, maybe you don't take part in the chat rooms, maybe you're listening to the downloads, the podcast, our YouTube channel, whatever it may be. This is all because of you. We are going to make an official run at becoming one of the big shows, and it starts literally tomorrow. I gotta go, and I have electricians coming over. Bazooka Joe, you know him, he's an electrician. He's coming over tomorrow. We're going to pace everything out. I gotta go find a contractor to help us build everything, and all because of you guys. Those who donated, those who supported us. Even if you didn't donate financially, you are a huge part of this. Huge part of what we do. You're spreading the words on social media. You're spreading the words to your friends, your family. Everything you guys have done has benefited everything that we are doing here. And I'm very humbled and grateful and thankful to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of it. Because my life, my family's life officially changed today. And it's all because of you guys. We're going to take this seriously. We're going to continue the strong programming like tonight's guest with David Weatherly. We're going to continue to bring new features onto our website. The work is just beginning, but it starts tomorrow. And I'm very excited. I'm very humbled. I'm very thankful for all of you because we own the night. We're going to truly own it all together. One of our favorite guests is back, of the strange and weird, author, explorer, investigator of all things paranormal. David Weatherly is back to join us and talk about his strange and weird life. The tales are phenomenal, from black-eyed kids to wooden ox and Sasquatch, and don't forget every ghost in between. David's thorough investigative techniques have him as one of the most trusted voices in this field. David has appeared on numerous television shows, including Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans. One of the most sought-after speakers at conferences, David will actually be appearing at our Caribou Paracon this September 28th to 30th with Ross Allison, Grant Cameron, Lorian Fenton, and others who are going to be here. There is nothing that scares David off, or is there? I've never really asked him that question, because he's willing to search for the truth to what's out there, wherever it may take him. So, David, I got to ask you right off the bat, because I know it's been a while here, what scares you?
Well, how you doing, Dave? It's good to be on.
Good to have you back, my friend. What? Honestly, I've never asked you that question. What scares you, man?
You know, you'd be surprised how often I'm actually asked that question. But my answer, I think, surprises some people. Nothing in the realm of the strange or paranormal. I don't know if scares me is the right word, but the thing I find the most concerning working in this field is that I've had a few brushes with the human element that are very dangerous. I don't know if I've ever told you the story or not, but there's a ghost town in Utah that is fairly remote. I've investigated it a few times and never had any issues there. And decided to go one night, had one other person with me, and the road that approaches this thing is sort of, it's up in the hills, and it's a dirt gravel road, and it makes a lot of noise. You go down this, you go around this long bend, and you reach the first part of the ghost town, which actually is a cemetery. And I just, we were coming down. You have to drive slow because of the terrain and everything. There's some big potholes. We were driving slow, and as we were coming around this bend, the headlights kind of caught something, and we turned the headlights off because I thought it was at first I thought it was an animal. Then I saw it again. I thought this is a person. I don't know why somebody's out here. But what concerned me is what I thought I saw. And we turned the lights off, got out of the vehicle, and approached very carefully to close to where the cemetery was. And sure enough, there was a guy walking along the ridge by the cemetery. It was a small ridge with a shotgun. And now this literally is a ghost town. No one lives back there, and there's not many houses close by. And I was able to sort of, from my vantage point, look down into the gully that was behind where this guy was walking, and there's this beat up old van parked down in this wash. And how it had gotten down there alone is kind of a mystery. But I knew right off, wow, there's really something. This is not cool. We need to get out of here. And we slowly made our way back down, got in the vehicle, and got out of there. A couple days later, I was in the nearest town, ran into a county deputy that I knew a little bit, and just started chatting with him. And I brought this up. And he's like, "You're kidding me. You were out there?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're lucky you didn't get your head blown off." And it was a mobile meth lab that these guys had gone up there, and they had driven this old beat up vehicle down into this wash, and they were cooking meth back there. And these guys, I mean, these guys are whack jobs. They'll shoot somebody and just forget about it, and just drive away or leave you in the dirt or whatever. So, that's not a paranormal story, but at the same time, it's a very relevant story because in exploring the things that I do and that people like me do, there's a lot of circumstances. I've heard a lot of stories of people out looking for Sasquatch that have run into, illegal marijuana operations and all kinds of things, back in the deep woods. So there are genuine concerns, and those are the things that really kind of concern me in terms of doing what I do. And I know it's not the answer everybody hopes for. Everybody wants to hear, what is it in the creepy element that really disturbs you or scares you? And, there's not really anything within that realm. And I say that, and I'm knocking on wood as I'm doing it because, who knows? Maybe I just haven't run into it yet. I have been in situations where I found a particular place very disturbing, and I can tell you what that relates to if you want to hear that.
I would love to. Of course, our audience would love to hear it. You're David Weatherly, man.
So, in terms of paranormal things, I think the most unsettling places I have investigated are places linked to serial killers, and the one that comes to mind right off the bat is Fox Hollow. Now, I don't know if you remember this place or not. Fox Hollow is in Indiana, and it was the home of a notorious serial killer named Herb Baumeister. This story has been on a few of the true crime things and stuff like that, so it's somewhat of a familiar name. This guy was he was very wealthy. He had started a chain of grocery stores that he made a lot of money off of. And the authorities actually believe that he was a serial killer. I can't remember the interstate of it. I think it's I-70. There are all these bodies that have shown up along a particular interstate that they learned much later was kind of linked to him. But in later years, in the 80s, he started a chain called Save-A-Lot. It's like a thrift store, grocery store. And he's making a lot of money. He built this very nice house in Indiana. He had a wife and kids. And what he would do would be to send his wife and kids out of town. And when they were gone, he would go down into Indianapolis, and he would troll the gay bars and pick up these young men, bring them back to his house, and kill them. And he was doing it in the pool house that's in the home. And he was filming this stuff. He had a video recorder set up and had it aimed at the pool. So, it was this weird kind of, I guess he was making snuff films, essentially, for his own private pleasure, so to speak.
That's disgusting.
It's disgusting, but I tell you, Dave, it's very disturbing for a lot of reasons. I mean, the crimes and everything aside, what really disturbed me, we got the opportunity to investigate this place. Not many people have investigated it because there's a family that lives in the home now. And
how? How?
I know exactly where you're going. That was my question. I don't know. I don't know. This guy and his wife and kids live in this home, and we were very fortunate. We got the opportunity to investigate. They let us come in, and the home is it hasn't been renovated or anything. The layout is the same. The pool it's an indoor pool. It's downstairs. So you go downstairs to the lower level, and here's this large open room with a bar, and it's like a game room or something, for a pool table, and there's couches, and there's this big picture window that looks into the next room, and that next room is the pool. This is a full size. As I recall, it's an Olympic-sized pool. It's a big pool. And Baumeister had supposedly had this camera mounted that looked in through that window and filmed everything, because he would get these guys into the pool and, they would be fooling around, and in the midst of it, he would kill them. Now, I'm going to creep you out even more, because the guy who owns the home gave us a tour, and he told us a bunch of details and stuff. He was taking us around and showing us everything. And the family was there while we did the investigation, actually. It's a big home, so they stayed upstairs, so there was no interference or contamination or anything. And as he was giving us the tour, he took us into the pool area. And excuse me, and he was explaining, this is what happened, and on the side of the, on one side of the pool, there's a room, a maintenance room, where equipment and stuff for the pool is kept. And he was telling us a few of the things, that had happened there, some of the reports, and that, his friends had experienced and different people had experienced. And we're in this maintenance room because he said, yeah, there's some weird stuff that happens around this maintenance room. We're standing with this guy in the maintenance room, and hanging on the wall are some of the, it's like the net to, on the pole to get stuff out of the pool. And there's one of those long tubes, the thing that runs in and sucks stuff out of the swimming pool.
Yeah.
You're in Canada. You don't even have a swimming pool.
Well, there is the odd one. There is the odd one.
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about. So this long, automated cord, it's actually a big thick tube hanging on the wall. This guy very calmly, was explaining how Baumeister would kill these men. And the method was strangulation. He would strangle these men. And without missing a beat, he says, yeah, that's the hose he used, pointing at the hose on the wall.
Oh my goodness.
And I think I'm always very composed with people. I just, I didn't say anything for a minute, and kind of, let it go for a couple of beats. And I said, that's the same hose that Baumeister used. So just to clarify, and this guy says, oh yeah.
Oh my
And I'm
goodness.
thinking, my God, you've essentially left the murder weapon on the premise. It was really hard to wrap my mind around that part for some reason. I just, it was mind-boggling enough that these people live, with their kids in a home with this kind of reputation, because they don't even know exactly how many victims there were. The number is up to 20, but that's not confirmed, and there's a lot of suspicions that there were more. And he was dismembering the bodies and burying them on his property. Now, there are woods that surround the house. And at the time, he was just scattering, the body parts. We got a really gruesome show so far tonight, don't we?
So far, yes. That's okay. Let's run with it.
You asked for it. So yeah, some of the reports, some of the paranormal reports are, these weird manifestations of, partial manifestations of humans on the property. And the guy who lives in the home now, he still consistently finds bone fragments and so forth on his property. And he collects them, and he's told us, like once a month or so, he'll, take a box of bone fragments down to the police department, because they're used in, potentially identifying victims.
That almost sounds like the Picton pig farm here in British Columbia, where Robert Willie Picton would put his victims through a wood chipper before feeding them to the pigs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hate to sound grotesque like that, but that's a true story. That's what happened. There are some sick and deranged people out there, David. When you're and when you're in this field looking for some weird and strange, you got to be careful, man.
Well, let me tell you something else. The investigation was pretty incredible. I'll tell you that. It probably doesn't surprise you, just because of the nature of what happened there. And kind of back to your original point, you were asking what, if any of these things scare me. They don't really, but I can tell you that the idea of being in that home and essentially walking in the footsteps of a serial killer is very unsettling. It's a very disturbing, just everything about it to me personally. And I just, man, there's just such a creep factor about that. And, again, it kind of gets back to the human element rather than, ghost reports and paranormal activity. But there was plenty of that kind of stuff there, too, that was pretty off the hook. There's an attached studio apartment that's part of this home on the second floor. It's, as I remember correctly, this has been a couple of years now. I believe it's over the garage, but it, there's a lot of reports in it, and there's a flight of exterior steps that you climb to get to the front door of this apartment. So we got to investigate up there. There are a whole range of reports because there was actually a guy who they call him the one who got away. And he was involved with Baumeister, and Baumeister attempted to kill him, but he made it out. He got away from Herb. So he was purportedly staying in that apartment, and there's a lot of reports associated with that. And the people that have lived in that apartment in the aftermath have had some strange events happen in there. So a few of the common reports for these weird manifestations in the apartment itself, some sounds. There's people that have reported hearing this knocking on the door when there's no one there. But I tell you, we had something really bizarre. Now, we had a fellow with us who had lived in the apartment for a while and was up there with us and was filling us in, giving us some of his experiences. And we had, we conducted an investigation up there and got some really strange things. There's various readings and some anomalous sounds and so forth. But what's weird is this was when the investigation was kind of winding down, and this portion of it. And the four of us are sitting in there, and all of a sudden it starts to thunderstorm. And I mean, it was driving rain, pelting against the windows, and you could hear it, and pelting against the upstairs. And we're like, oh man, it's really coming down. And we made a statement, man, that how are we going to keep this equipment dry getting out? And we kind of waited for a few minutes, and it didn't sound like it was letting up. We finally decided, well, let's try to get out. We opened the front door, and it was dry as a bone outside.
Wow.
Four of us had sat there and listened to this driving rain, and there's not a drop of water outside.
That is odd.
It's really odd. It's very odd. And that was definitely in terms of weird experiences, especially there, that was one of the top things for sure. I mean, we had other stuff going on there too. We had just some incredible responses from the spirit boxes. At one point I was using one of those in the pool area, because we decided, okay, this has got to be a hot spot. So, I let the other guys leave, and I stayed in the pool area myself and ran a ghost box and, to see what kind of responses I could get. And, what appeared to be coming through was Herb himself. And, I was none too friendly with him, of course, but, he essentially expressed the concern that he was hanging around because he was afraid of going to hell. So, it's, and just so listeners and everything know sort of the conclusion of the story, I know some people are wondering, Baumeister, he fell under suspicion after the number of deaths, after the death toll was climbing, and the cops kind of got wind that, he was likely the guy, and he took off. He drove up to Canada, and at one point, a police officer found him parked near a bridge, and the police officer approached his vehicle and asked him, what are you doing? You can't stay here. He had a big duffel bag in the back seat or something, but he, by all accounts, he was fairly well spoken and I guess somewhat suave, and there wasn't any kind of mass search out for him at that moment. So they just basically told him, you need to move along. And he did. And he checked himself. I think he checked into a hotel, as I recall. But essentially what he did, he went up to Canada and he shot himself. He shot himself in the head, committed suicide before he could be caught and tried. All the videotapes disappeared. And, I've heard some speculation that he had them with him when he drove to Canada. So it's just crazy. It's such a, it was Ontario is where he went to finish himself off. So
terrible.
Yeah.
Craig has a question for you. He is asking, David, what do you think makes these people tick? What do you think drives these serial killers? And have your investigations brought you any deeper understanding?
understanding of serial killers. Is that what I'm understanding?
Maybe of what
the question to be?
Yeah, the serial killers, because it all kind of ties in a little bit, you know?
It does somewhat. I mean, that's, such a intense field of study. I don't think there's any one answer for all of these people. Obviously, there's a lot of various derangement and psychoses involved and everything. I know that a lot of people jump in and say, it's got to be something demonic or so forth. And, my answer to that is that is certainly a potential, I think, at times, but then you get into a chicken or the egg question. Did this guy become possessed or have something attached to him because he was so sinister to begin with? It's really difficult to tell. I really don't. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. I think there's people that have been studying that field for a very long time and trying to understand, trying to get into the mind of these types, and it's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very, I don't envy people who do that for a living, man. That's got to be a very disturbing, field to be involved in and to be able to shake off. I guess it takes a unique personality to even, attempt to be a profiler or something. You
know what? I couldn't do that job either. I get grossed out by stuff like that. That's why I don't even watch horror movies, man. I don't even watch horror movies.
You'd have to have a real level of detachment, I think, in order to be able to do that job and just, how do you not take it home with you?
Well, let's spice this up a little bit. Let's bring some happiness and joy into this. All right, because I was actually just about to ask you if you had any Black-Eyed Kid updates, but God of Thunder at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter says, David, have you ever come across credible photos or videos of Black-Eyed Kids?
Here's the thing about that. It is so easy these days to fake photographs. It's somewhat distressing for people like us in the field, because whether it's a UFO photo or video or Sasquatch or Black-Eyed Kid or whatnot, you sort of get into an additional level of difficulty with something like a BEK, because you do have these full sclera lenses, contact lenses that are available. So, theoretically, you could get some kids to just act creepy with a pair of those lenses on and, peer through a window or something and snap a photo, and you'd have a genuine picture. It doesn't mean it's a genuine picture of the phenomena. So, in a lot of ways, I just they're sent to me all the time. And I just think, okay, well, occasionally there are a few that are interesting because of the circumstances that they come with. But, there hasn't been one that I've put up and said, I believe this is a genuine photograph and so forth. What is kind of fascinating to me is that there are a number of cases, there are a few that are documented in my book. There are a few cases where these kids have shown up and there have been security cameras present that malfunctioned or simply shut down for some unexplained reason. And that gets kind of intriguing because, now you get into MIB, Men in Black territory. And there are some similarities between the MIBs and the Black-Eyed Kids. Electronic interference is one of them. So, I think that it's very possible that if these things showed up and someone had a camera ready and so forth and took a picture, I don't know that the picture would even come out. Because like I said, there have been a few instances where, they should have been captured on film, on video, and they weren't.
What do you mean that the electronic signals are kind of the same between MIBs and BEKs?
The electronic interference.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a lot of cases where, of course, all the Men in Black stories. There's a lot of cases where electronics just don't work correctly. They malfunction. And the same thing has been the case with black-eyed kids. There's been very strange things that link to electronic devices that have occurred around these kids. And, for instance, I'll give you an example. When the first edition of the book came out, it wasn't long after it had been out that a woman contacted me, and she said, I started reading your book, and several things have happened to me, and I want to know if, what you had to say about this. And she said that, she sat down and she started reading the book one night, and this has been a long time. I'm trying to remember the sequence. So she told me, she started reading the book, and the timer on her oven went off. So she's just sitting in her house by herself reading, and this weird, something electronic is going off. And she kind of walks around the house because she didn't know what it was. And she found it. She found that it was a timer on the oven. And she says, I've never used that. I've never used the timer on my oven, so I don't know why it went off like that. And then she had another incident, with something electronic. And then the third time, and this was a real kicker for her, she was, she sat down, she picked up the book, started reading, and she heard this noise, and it was her garage door opening itself. And, she rushed out there and saw it. She had the only opener herself, it was in her car. Now, that one really freaked her out. And she said, look, I'm really interested in this topic, but I don't want any visitations, and I don't understand why this is happening. So, I talked to her a couple of times, and what I found was I received a lot of those types of reports after the book came out, that people studying the phenomena were having these odd things occur, often linked to electronics. There was another woman who contacted me and said that she started researching the topic, and this was before she knew about my book. And she said that, she had sequential problems. She had, the lights in her office kept burning out. She was trying to look this stuff up online about these black-eyed kids, and the computer ended up crashing, when she was finding a site to study this stuff. So there's a lot of indications that somehow, at least a portion of the time, they're able to influence or possibly manipulate or cause problems with electronic implements.
Gail is asking, do you know anyone personally, David, who has seen one of these, or is it just anecdotal stories?
Well, yeah, of course I do. I mean, the book is full of people I interviewed who encountered these things.
But I'm saying, I realize there's a difference between interviewing people and having, say, your best friend or a brother or a cousin, Oh,
I see what you're saying. No,
yeah.
Not my best friend, but a couple of people that I know well enough and have known for a long time have encountered them. So, yes.
That's just eerie. Do you think then, through what you have learned, that there is some sort of connection or correlation between, I'm going to use the word species, of black-eyed kids and Men in Black? Do you think that they are linked somehow?
Oh, I think it's very possible. Nick Redfern is a good friend of mine. Of course, he's kind of the preeminent guy currently on Men in Black. Has done a lot of research and study, and he and I have talked about this quite a bit. Of course, he wrote the foreword for Black-Eyed Children, and there's so many similarities that I don't know. It's weird, because you can look at it to one degree and say, well, is this another model that something is attempting? Just like they attempted the Men in Black and the MIBs. You can almost say, okay, they've kind of rewritten their program to a degree, and now they're trying this sort of new twist with these kids. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Because you kind of come full circle to this idea. You know, you guys know that I've talked to you before. John Keel was a big influence on me early on, you know, when I started researching this stuff in the 70s. And, you know, John, I can remember talking to him, and he had this whole concept of a more sort of holistic view of this stuff and this interconnectedness with a lot of this phenomena. And that's something that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people, even in the field, a lot of researchers. You know, people really want to compartmentalize. And I have a personal issue with that because, you know, I think that what I've seen happen, you know, from my early days of doing this stuff, I saw this growth in the field where everybody wanted their own personal slice of the pie. And they wanted it to be separate, you know, it couldn't touch the other slices of pie, you know. So it's like, over here we got the guys who studied UFOs, and UFOs are nut and bolt spacecraft that are flying from, you know, Zeta Reticuli or wherever, you know, they're coming here. That has nothing to do with, you know, Sasquatch or ghost or anything else. And then, you know, you got people over here who are, you know, the Bigfoot researchers who say, nope, Sasquatch is an undiscovered North American ape. Doesn't have anything to do with ghost lights or any of these other phenomena. And what happened was, you know, all these organizations sprang up, and you know, nothing necessarily against them. They serve a certain purpose. But what would happen would be that there was always a segment of people, a segment of witnesses who experienced multiple types of phenomena. And Dave, where do those people go? They go first to one organization and they're told, no, we study Sasquatch. We don't want to hear about UFOs. You need to go over there. We don't wear tinfoil hats. The UFO people, you know, they start listening, and as soon as well, there was this hairy creature. No, you got to go call the Bigfoot people. And that, you know, the problem is everybody wants this. Everybody wants very clearly drawn lines and definitions for phenomena that we don't completely understand. And I think that's a real folly to try to do that. You know, I'm not saying that UFOs are flying around dropping off Sasquatch, but, you know, I also, you know, have to acknowledge the idea that there are certain places on this planet that for some reason have a high degree of strangeness, and it's across the board. You know, there are regions where you just see a ridiculous number of UFO sightings, cryptid accounts, haunted locations, and, you know, that's what we need to look at and question. Okay, why? You know, if old Miss Jones said that she went outside because she saw these strange lights in the sky, and when she did, there was this weird creature in her garden. Okay, I want to listen to this. I want to know, you know, exactly what did you see? And, you know, my files are full of cases like that. People that were just really frustrated because they felt like they were being belittled by the very people they hoped were going to listen to them and support them because they had experienced something strange. I think it's morphed and changed some in recent years because, you know, frankly, I don't need to tell you this, a lot of the larger organizations have suffered for various reasons, and there's a lot more crossing over amongst phenomena. There's more and more people all the time that research across the board. You know, I used to be an anomaly because, you know, I was an old school guy. When I said I researched the paranormal, well, that meant, you know, I might be in a haunted castle one week and checking out a cryptid report the next week. And that used not to be very common, but it's become a lot more so now.
Yet there is still that big group out there, Dave, who absolutely refuses. I mean, we've talked about this numerous times when you've been on the show, where we have Bigfoot researchers who are absolutely refusing to look out of anything besides a Gigantopithecus or a North American great ape. They refuse to look at anything else, even though evidence, history, legends, lore of First Nations prove otherwise. And that goes through the UFOs, black-eyed kids, ghosts, and everything. We've segregated it down so much, these topics, that I don't think people can even handle thinking of something that they don't believe anymore.
Yeah, that might be the case. You know, it's just, it's a slow process, I think, to sort of bring that back around so that people understand it's okay to look at multiple types of phenomena. And it doesn't, like I said, I mean, just because I study it all on any given occasion doesn't mean that I believe that, you know, A equals B. I mean, it just, you know, but you have to be open to the possibility. And to me, you know, some of the greatest minds in this field have that more holistic view. You know, I mean, John Keel, of course, has passed away. Jacques Vallée, you know, some of these people that have been more innovative and had a holistic approach are the ones that really influenced me. And I've, you know, tried my best to continue that tradition as I've, you know, put more material out there and so forth. But I think you really need to look across the board. It's the same thing when you get into a religious perspective on a lot of this phenomena. You know, there's a lot of people out there who want to only view it, for instance, from a Catholic or Christian perspective and say, you know, oh no, it's, you know, you got a ghost, it's a demon. No, that doesn't mean that. You know, it doesn't mean it's even a conscious entity. I mean, you know, we could be simply dealing with some kind of residual energy, you know, like a recording. I mean, let's look at different possibilities and perspectives. And, you know, it's kind of aggravating to see. I've seen situations where a quote team will go in and try to help someone, and they'll try to use, you know, for instance, you know, a Christian approach, and, you know, maybe the family is practicing Buddhist or something, and you can't. It's not going to work.
So in David Weatherly's world, what is a black-eyed child or a black-eyed kid?
Oh, I think that it's an interdimensional entity. That's what I believe that they are. Now, that's kind of a broad definition because we don't really know, you know, exactly what that is. And this is kind of, this is sort of convoluted. I'll see if I can unwind it enough to keep it fairly short. You know, there's traditions all over the world that talk about other races of beings having lived here on the planet with us at some point. And what happens is that, again, you know, these folk tales or traditions or whatever you want to call them, they get co-opted by a lot of different belief systems. You know, some people think it's just simple folklore, creative storytelling. You know, you've got the ancient alien theorists come in and say, nope, it was aliens, you know, and everybody visualized Giorgio, you know. Giorgio is a great guy. I'm just ragging on him a little bit, but, you know, it's aliens, you know. And, you know, in some ways you could look at it and say, yeah, well, maybe it does kind of fall into that, because you hear these stories, and what happens is these tribal cultures will talk about another race being here, but then that other race leaves at some point. Now, maybe they leave through a shimmering doorway or a hole in the sky, or maybe they climb into something that takes them away. What I have found from traveling all over and you know, all over the world, actually, and talking to different tribal elders, there's a real consistency in this idea about these other entities having been here at some point and leaving. And when you talk to these elders, you get the sense that they're talking about a portal. And, you know, this would be a portal into another dimension or another level of existence. And actually, when you probe further with a lot of these guys, that's what they will say. They'll say, well, they went back to where they came from. You know, some of the traditions say that they're still here. It's just that we can't see them. For instance, when you start digging into the jinn, you know, the jinn were technically banished, but they still live here. Essentially, you start to understand that they're here and sort of sharing space with us, but, you know, maybe they're just resonating differently, or they're the next dimension over. I don't know. There's different interpretations you could use, but they're still sort of here. Now, where I'm going with all of this is that, of course, for years and years, these have been nothing but fancy stories and tribal tales. But in recent years, quantum scientists have come around to this idea and said, hey, you know what? We've determined there are 12 other dimensions. We don't know what's there or how to get there, but we know they're there. Now, that opens up a pretty big world all of a sudden, because, but when the first time I heard that, my first response was, okay, just because we can't get there doesn't mean that something there can't get here. And when you look at these concepts coming out of the quantum sciences and sort of run those parallel to old tribal traditions, and look at the two tracks as different interpretations of the same thing, that to me is pretty eye-opening. And you can say, okay, here is another clear interpretation of the idea that there are other levels of existence, and there's probably something there. I think that that's where some of these entities that we deal with in our world, I think that's where they're coming from. I think they're coming through somehow from wherever they really live.
We got about 5 minutes here before we got to go to break, Dave. This leads me to a question then, because you are a noted researcher, one of the most respected out there. That's why we're so lucky to have you on Spaced Out Radio every 2 months. I look at a guy like John Tenney, who has pretty much the exact same reputation you do. And I consider you guys, along with Nick Redfern and others, to be the heavyweights of the researchers of the paranormal. How come when you talk about this, or John talks about this, there's not a lot of snark that goes towards you guys? There are people who are willing to take your theories about what creatures like the Black-Eyed Kids or Dogman or Bigfoot are, yet if somebody in a smaller group says the exact same thing, that their research has led to it, they get absolutely lambasted on social media and articles and on YouTube, whatever it may be. Why do you think that is?
I have no idea how to answer that one. I really don't.
But it is, no offense, Dave, it is a legitimate question, though.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure it is. And, but it's hard, understand it's hard for me to answer because I don't, you're sort of talking in vague terms. I mean, I don't know, who those people are or what their background is or anything else. So that's that's a tough one for me to answer, Dave, because I'm not really, I'm kind of being asked a very broad
okay, well, let me tighten
comment on.
Let me tighten it up a little bit for you then, my friend. Okay, why do you think people such as you and John Tenney get a pass on claiming we don't know what these creatures are, we're trying to figure it out, we're not willing to eliminate anything because we must study all? Yet there are others out there who are absolutely all over social media saying that's not true. Bigfoot isn't interdimensional or a shapeshifter. Skinwalkers aren't real. Black-eyed kids are just a bunch of hooligans running around the street because they got caught playing soccer instead of a real sport. You know how it goes.
Yeah, and I know John, and Nick's a good friend of mine, and trust me, I mean, people take shots at us. It's the nature of what we do. I think you have to, at some point, just decide, okay, you're going to keep doing your research or you're not. When I really started, I've been in this field a long time, Dave, and when I decided to start publishing and really putting stuff out there, I kind of did it with the mindset that I'm not out to prove to anybody that any of this stuff exists. I'm not. Let me back up a second. I have people approach me, fairly often that want to, hey, will you, kind of mentor me in ghost hunting? I want to start doing this or that. And, occasionally I'll work with people like that. One of the first things I always ask is why why are you doing this? What do you want to, why are you getting involved in this field? And there's a good percentage of these people who the first thing they will tell me is, I want to prove to everyone that ghosts exist. And my response is, look, go outside to the nearest pavement and start banging your head, because you're going to have a horrible road if that is your driving force for being in this. Because there's the old adage, you're never going to convince a skeptic, and a believer doesn't need proof. So, I think that you have to do this stuff in this field for your own motivations. And, if you're fortunate and if you're nice to people, I think, and just put your information out there, some people are going to appreciate it, and some people are going to say, oh, it's complete BS. But, you just keep doing what you love. I do this stuff because it's my passion. And, I'm not hung up on convincing anybody. If the main thing I want to do is put information out there that causes people to investigate and to research more on their own. I hope that I'm inspiring somebody and provoking some thought and giving people pause to think, wow, I could see that potential. I want to read more about that or learn more about that or investigate it myself. That's what I'm hoping to accomplish.
Wonderful. We are up against a break here. David Weatherly is our guest. His website, twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.ca. You could check, or .com, one of the two, depending on the country you're in. And you could check out all of his books on twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com, including Wood Knocks, Volume 2. You got to see this new cover. It is phenomenal. What a beautiful cover. We're going to have more with David Weatherly coming up next on Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at SpacedOutRadio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at SpacedOutRadio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, I'm bringing in some friends. We're doing the SOR Paranormal Roundtable. All topics will be kept secret right until the end, until showtime. I'll bring them on out. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, at over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, and you can listen to us every single night on thefringe.fm. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Poliosins phallomyelitis? What the hell is this, Bill? Poliosins phallomyelitis? I can't even pronounce this. Bill sets the password each and every night. Damn it, Bill, you got me. Bill sets the password each and every night. Right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. You can also check us out on periscope.tv. We're live Monday through Friday. You can also check us out on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/spacedoutradio and give our page a subscribe there. I would appreciate that. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. What you got to do there is go to our website. You can shop at our store, read the encounter online, rock out to some Bumblefoot, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers Contact TV, and so much more. David Weatherly is on the show tonight from Two Crows Paranormal out of Las Vegas. David is one of the premier researchers in this field. He comes on the show every second month. David, welcome back.
Thanks, man.
Dude, I got to tell you, that new cover that you got for Woodknox, the Journal of Sasquatch Research, that is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
That is volume 3 that is coming out fairly soon.
Oh, man. Who does your work for this? Like, it looks so real. I mean, I got to tell you, when I saw Sasquatch, and I got a behind view, okay, so I got a full right side profile and back profile of the creature, and this looks identical to what I saw. Identical on Woodknox 2 and id 3. Who is your artist who is creating this stuff?
Well, and volume 2, just to clarify, volume 2 was a tribute to Patterson Gimlin film. So, that was his take on Patty. The artist is a fellow named Sam Sheeran, and Sam is a great guy. He it was really funny because he's a Brit, and he contacted me sometime after Black Eyed Children came out, and he said he sent me this email, and he said. Introduced himself, and he said, I'm an artist. He said, if there's any chance that I could do a cover for you at some point, I really love your work, and I listen to you all the time on interviews and stuff. And the ironic thing was, when I got the email, I was working on Strange Intruders, and was close to being finished with it. And I checked out his website and looked at some of his stuff, and what I saw at the time, it's he did a lot of stuff that was sort of industrial, and, definitely had a weird vibe to some of it and everything. And my first thought was, wow, I don't know, it's not really the look I'm going for. But then I was like, I just had such a good feeling about this guy. I threw him a concept for the Strange Intruders cover. And I said, this is what I want. We were talking about other dimensions and portals earlier. The concept for Strange Intruders was that if for anyone who's seen the cover, they'll see there are all these figures standing, and what they're doing is sort of pushing through a pane of glass, what looks like glass. So it's kind of shattering. So the concept was that these things are, on another level of existence, and they're coming through. And, he liked the concept, and he played with it some, and I tell you, Dave, I was sitting there in my office late in the night, one night working, and the email popped in. He sent this cover, and I was floored by it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And people still love that cover, partially because it has different, a bunch of the different entities on the front, but, it's a tribute. It's just all attributed to his work. And Sam Sheeran is his name. He goes by Mr. Sam.
Yes.
And he is just, this guy is phenomenal. He has done, he became in high demand, especially in my field. And at the same time, he does a lot of covers for CDs. He's done stuff for Rob Zombie, and He's done work for some of the comics companies, and the guy is just amazing. I mean, everything I give him, he really knocks it out of the park, and sometimes I'll just give him a vague concept. The Would Not series, the first one, the first volume, the cover is based on my sighting that I had when I was young. The second volume is, as I said, a tribute to the Patterson-Gimlin film. And it's a full wraparound cover. So the back side of the cover, you can see Bob and Roger on horseback. And the third volume that came out, for that, I told him, I said, look, I want a completely different color palette, and I want you to do, something from the desert, because we've got contributions, a couple of contributions on sightings in the desert in this volume. And I really wanted a very different looking depiction of the creature. And, he did he does his work. I mean, he checked out and read some of the reports and stuff of, for instance, the Mogan monster and some of the reports in the Southwest. And that's what he came up with, was that cover for volume 3. And I just posted the full wrap of it today to show the desertscape on the back, and it's amazing. It's another incredible job.
He also did some great work for a good friend of this show, Shannon Legro, and her Into the Fray podcast that she does.
Mm-hmm.
She is, Sam is, I can't say enough about his work. He makes it so realistic. The talent is sickening. It really is sickening, and I mean that in just the most, complimentary way possible. So, I mean, kudos to you for getting him to do your books, because it's just a phenomenal piece of art. It really is.
Yeah, he's amazing. He did the revised edition of the Black Eyed Children.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen that, and again, just really captured it. Just the creepy factor and everything with him being on the doorstep and all. So the guy, he's pretty amazing. He's a really good guy. I mean, we've become, friends over the years. He's back in England right now, but he spends a lot of time in the States. And he can really pull some stuff off, I tell you.
I'm jealous. I'm not going to lie. A little jealous over that.
Yeah.
The main thing is, I mean, when you deal with a creature and you have something that looks that realistic that a lot of people have seen, David, does it make you believe when you see the art that someone like Sam does, and the way he's really taken a lot of, whether it's photos or personal descriptions of what people have seen, and really brings it out into the light? Does that really, kind of confirm a little bit more beliefs for you that this creature is real, because so many people are seeing the exact same thing?
Yeah, I mean, the descriptions are so consistent. They really are. So it's fascinating that people are, seeing, describing such similar things from very different parts of the country. And even in some regional differences, of course. For instance, you go to Florida, there's a piece in the new edition on skunk apes from a researcher named Robert Robinson. And he lives in Florida, and he's done a lot of work down there. And of course, the skunk apes, as they're called down there, are described as being a lot smaller in size, and just environmental differences and so forth. But they still remain consistent, I find, and even a lot of things about the structure of the creature, its size, accepted. There's so much consistency. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool when an artist like Sam can come forward and so perfectly display and portray something that somebody has seen and encountered themselves.
Does Bigfoot still excite you, to cover Bigfoot? Is it a creature, Dave, that, even though it's an oldie but a goodie, and there's so many more sexier creatures out there, whether it's black-eyed kids, men in black, Dogman, these bipedal canines that seem to be bigger than Dogman out in the Pennsylvania area, does it still intrigue you when it comes to Bigfoot?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think that for a lot of reasons, I still think that there's just a lot that we don't understand about this creature, and even just from a research perspective. And that's one of the reasons that, no one has quite found it. And there's a lot of division in the cryptozoology field in terms of what this thing is. I mean, you brought this up earlier yourself. Some people that are convinced that it is a descendant of Gigantopithecus. There's other people that say, no, this is, it's interdimensional. And there's people out there who are convinced that this thing is, that these creatures are psychic, that they're in communication with them, and they're highly intelligent. So what's fascinating about it is that there are so many reports, not just in the United States and North America, but, really around the world. And at the same time, there's so much consistency, and there's also so much diversity in what people are perceiving and what they're believing about this thing. And, it's a pretty fascinating mystery as to why we don't have solid proof that these things exist. But then at the same time, you look at classic cryptozoology, and there are creatures that in the past people were convinced were myths and were later proven to exist. Mountain gorillas are a good example. The coelacanth, everybody thought that was extinct. So there are things like that crop up and eventually are discovered. And it's very likely at some point we'll, discover, quote, officially discover one of these creatures.
What do you think about the theory, Dave, that maybe the government doesn't want Bigfoot discovered because logging is still a large primary resource for work and for, resources to build houses? Everything is built out of wood. Let's be honest. We're still in that category. And then you add in the environmental aspect of oil. We're still quite an oil-based continent as well. And if Bigfoot is seen in these areas where logging is going on, which we've seen and heard plenty of reports on, but even in oil areas where they are testing for oil, then if we have this creature out there and it's proven to exist, the possibility of environmentalists and, environmentally sensitive areas then become, how can I put it? They become part of the big debate on whether or not we're killing its territory and whether or not it needs that area to survive because we don't know how many numbers there are. I mean, it just opens up this Pandora's box, environmentalism versus what we need as a continent.
Yeah. I hear that theory occasionally. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy that gets kind of pulled in on some of these Sasquatch accounts. And I don't really buy the whole logging aspect that it's, the logging industry shutting down the facts that they exist or something like that. But at the same time, there's a few weird accounts that would indicate that the government possibly knows, at least some faction of the government may know that these things exist. And frankly, I find it kind of puzzling. I'm not exactly sure why they would have such a vested interest in covering up the idea that these creatures are out there, except for the fact that, the sort of turmoil and so forth it would create if this thing is suddenly acknowledged to exist, because you've got, as you said, you've got all the elements that would come into play. The idea that it's an endangered species, you've got various industries like logging and oil and so forth. So I don't know. I'm not overly convinced by a lot of the stories that I've heard that involve, the government kind of covering it up. And I think that it would be a very difficult thing for them to cover up in terms of, the number of sightings and so forth. And I still think it's inevitable that at some point one of these creatures is going to be, found and quote, proven to exist.
How come do you think that with all of these sightings and everything that's kind of gone on, we haven't been able to find the territory? Do you think this creature is very migratory, or do you believe that it is just a vagabond that just kind of goes wherever the food does?
Oh, I think some of both. I think that you've got regional migration, and at the same time, I think you've got, you're dealing with a creature that is highly intelligent. So, some researchers speculate, for instance, that they potentially bury their dead. And, that's a high possibility. But then you've got other areas that are so raw and so unexplored. I mean, people have this concept that we've been everywhere in the country and that we've explored every single thing, but there's vast tracts of wilderness that don't see humans on a regular basis. And, for an intelligent animal, it wouldn't be that difficult for them to hide out. It really wouldn't. I've talked to veteran park rangers who, spent years in some of the larger national parks, and, there's certain animals that they'd never see or very rarely have seen, things like mountain lions and things like that. So, you get up into some of these ranges. I mean, in, northern Nevada, there's the Jarbidge region, and that is raw territory that is very mountainous. It's very rich in resources, and there's not people living up there. It's a very sparse population in that area of the state. So, I think that there's so much potential for these creatures to hide out. I think it's much easier for these creatures to hide out than the average person assumes.
David, you're from Nevada. I know you're in Las Vegas, but I believe it was around 1999. There was an alleged Bigfoot sighting during a forest fire just somewhere outside of Reno, where there is a high populace of mountains and trees, where it was alleged that a Sasquatch came walking out of that fire and received medical treatment by the medical people on the field. Did you ever investigate that story as to whether it was true or not?
I know that story. That's called the Battle Mountain Incident. And it's a pretty fascinating story. It involves a guy who was purportedly with the emergency services at the time, and he contacted the BFRO and said that he was on Battle Mountain during the fires that were going on there, and that this creature wandered out of the forest, speaking some kind of language and making these sounds rather that very badly burned, and that it needed assistance, and that the emergency medical personnel started to attend to it. And, they weren't sure what it was. It was bipedal. It was humanoid. And he said that a Native American woman who was working with the staff started talking to this creature and comforting it. And it seemed to respond to her the best. Now, his account was that they treated the creature, that it had severe burns, and that it was put in a large, I forget what kind of truck it was. It was put in a truck and essentially taken away. And everyone was ordered to, be silent about the incident, essentially. Now, the BFRO, they received a couple of reports on this thing, and then they ended up dismissing it because they decided it was completely bogus. And what happened was the story kind of got resurrected because a researcher named Tom Powell decided to dig into it, and it was a significant time later that he just up and sent this guy an email, and he got an immediate response back from the gentleman, and ended up having a dialogue with this guy. So Powell was kind of convinced that this was a genuine incident and that there had been some kind of cover-up. The government had taken this creature away. The problem was that there were a lot of holes in the story, and it's been a while since I dug into it, but as I recall, there was a discrepancy with the fire itself, the dates or something of the fire. So, I think it's a fascinating story. Unfortunately, there's just really nothing to go on involving this incident. The guy who was the initial reporter stated that there was that there was DNA evidence on the site because he said that there was fluid and that there was, I think, hair from the creature and so forth. And investigators tried to get him to go back to the site and collect some of it. He did at a later point and claimed that the whole area had been bulldozed and that there was nothing there left to find. So at every turn, it seemed like there wasn't really anything else to pursue in terms of the story. It really comes down to, this person made a fascinating account, but what beyond that can you do with it?
Do you buy the story? Do you think it happened?
No, I don't.
I look at it, Dave, as, in this one area up here where we set up our gifting site, we had found 2 different size prints. And ever since the forest fires, we've had some small anomalous things happen, but nothing great happen at that site. I mean, and what I mean by small anomalous, it could have been mice, it could have been rats, could have been mink or martens or porcupines, deer, whatever it could be. We can't really say it's Sasquatch. Do you think that when it comes to these fires, I think a creature who, unless they're surrounded, would be getting the hell out of Dodge, much like we saw the animals moving around here to get away from the fires. Now, of course, some animals perished because they were surrounded by fire and no place to go. A lot of wild horses died that way up here. But on the flip side, I think a creature as elusive and what I would consider highly intelligent like a Sasquatch, I don't see it being trapped by fire.
Well, yeah, I mean, even humans, even firefighters have been trapped by fires. So I don't discount that possibility. These forest fires, especially in the Southwest, they're just monstrous, and they can shift in a second and completely surround someone. I mean, there were a few years ago, there was a hotshot team based out of Prescott, Arizona, that died fighting the fire. And I mean, these guys, they're the best of the best, but they suddenly got surrounded and they couldn't get out. So, that part I think is very possible. It's very feasible.
Well, you know what? It's one of those things, man, where until we find a creature, because, I mean, you think with a lot of these forest fires, Dave, that they would be finding, if they're finding, say, cows and rabbits and deer and wild or feral hogs, that with these forest fires, and some of them big, you look at California, Nevada, what happened up here last year where they get massive, you would think that a body would show up somewhere.
Yeah, but then, I mean, it was considering how intense a lot of these fires are, who's going to find it? And if they do find the remains, what are they even going to recognize out of it. You see what I'm saying?
No, absolutely, Dave. Absolutely. And I think what happens here is with this creature, I think, in my opinion, I think it's just smart enough and maybe ahead of the game. It seems to be ahead of the game most of the time for mankind. I think, there has to be some reason that we haven't found it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's kind of fascinated me about the Battle Mountain incident. And, like I said, from what I probed into it, I don't buy that it did happen. But what did fascinate me about it was that Battle Mountain is about halfway between Lovelock Cave and Jarbidge. Now, I think we've talked about Lovelock Cave on the show before.
Once before, yes.
Yeah, so Lovelock Cave, is where there's the whole legend of the natives fighting these giant cannibals called the Sitika. And that would be to the west of Battle Mountain. And to the east, you have a little town called Jarbidge. And Jarbidge is a curious thing because I think, and I was talking to Lauren Coleman about this, I think that Jarbidge is the only town directly named after a Sasquatch. So here's where it gets weird, because Jarbidge actually comes from the word Chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
In the lore of that region, the Shoshone Indians, the natives up there had a legend about a creature called Chupacabra. And you start digging into that, it sounds very much like the Lovelock Cave legend. Chupacabra was this giant that preyed on the people and was cannibal. And he would capture people, throw them in this basket, and carry them up to his lair, these caves, and devour them. So what happened was the natives finally at some point decided, they were going to do something about this, and they started chasing these things down. It becomes plural. There's not just one Chupacabra, but there are more. And every time they would find one, the natives would trap it in its cave, pile brush and wood in front of the cave and light it on fire, essentially burning this thing alive.
Mm-hmm.
So, what happened was Jarbidge was, for a brief period, a mining town. And it's a remote town. It's in fact, I think it's designated as the most remote town in the continental U.S. Because I believe it takes an hour to get out to Jarbidge. It's this little town. It's become very renowned for its fly fishing. It's fishing and it's hunting. There's big game and everything up there. It's right on the Jarbidge Wilderness. And there's people up there who report seeing this creature. Somewhere in the midst of Jarbidge becoming a mining town, it went through a couple of different names, and everyone says that what happened was the name Chupacabra was what people were saying around there, and because that is a difficult word to pronounce, it's not English, obviously, some kind of mangled, Dave, it was a mining town, probably a saloon on every corner, and you can imagine a bunch of drunk miners trying to talk about Chupacabra and coming out with Jarbidge, so that's what the name of the town morphed into. And they talk about the Jarbidge monster. It's still up there. So there are even modern sightings of this creature up there in this area. And it all comes from this early legend about these cannibal giants. And as I said, the curiosity to me, you've got the Jarbidge monster, Tsahabits, who was a cannibal who was burned in a cave. You go all the way to the west over to Lovelock, and you've got the Lovelock cave legend of Sitika, who met their end by being trapped in a cave and burned up. And then right in between that, you've got this modern story of Battle Mountain. So, that's fascinating. And at the same time, it kind of makes you wonder, okay, well, why? This is kind of odd. If this guy fabricated this story, it's curious that he had certain elements in there that are just similar to the region's folklore of these creatures.
I want to move on here because I was recently last month at the UFO Con 2018 down in San Francisco, and I heard a couple of people, Grant Cameron especially, talking about these Zendra portals. Have you looked into those at all?
I have not.
Apparently, these are being taken place at places that are very spiritually high areas with energy, with like Mount Shasta, where you're getting this group consciousness together, and basically calling in creatures and beings of peace, love, and light from different dimensions. Many people are saying they are running into Ontarel or aliens or some sort of spiritual entities, and these fogs seem to come around when these happen. What do you think about something like that, Dave? Would you step into that?
Would I step into the portal?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm familiar with this concept, and this really kind of goes pretty far back to the whole idea, the sort of new age idea of vortexes. Sedona, Arizona, of course, is the most renowned area for that. But I haven't heard the term you use, Zenda. Is that what you said?
Zendra.
I haven't heard Zendra. Yeah. So I haven't heard that term used, but the concept you're describing, I certainly have heard numerous times through the years. It's sort of, it goes back to sort of a amalgamation of some New Age concepts with the old tribal idea, shamanic idea of these portals existing. And there are places, of course, around the world where people profess that, you can make contact. Mount Shasta is certainly, near the top of that list. A lot of people have very strange encounters up there. And, it's the folklore of that stuff. The tribal lore goes way back to the natives. So I don't know if I would step into one of them. I mean, I've been at locations before where people have talked about, portals opening, things opening, and so forth. So I don't know. I don't know. It would be pretty fascinating to witness that, and to see exactly what's transpiring. I'm so curious-minded. I think initially I would be more fascinated to really observe and take in every detail I could in order to understand, okay, is this a manifestation of the group consciousness in terms of what they're perceiving, or, is it something that appears to be actually manifesting? I mean, I would just want to examine it, I think, from so many different levels, and I think that is entirely possible, because I do believe in the concept of the collective consciousness creating things. I absolutely believe that. And when you look at, I think we've talked about Slender Man on here before, and the concept of tulpas. So, it's entirely feasible that a collective of people could manifest the opening of a portal, especially in an area that has such a concentration of that belief, if you will, or that potential, like Mount Shasta.
I'm going to get more information from Grant Cameron because he's going to be coming up here to speak at the Paracon, same as you. And considering we're going to have a lot of people there from the Canadian Society of Questers who we're doing the event with, there's going to be a lot of positive spiritual energy there. And
right.
I want to read up on this because if we have the right people and we can sit people down during the day, I want to try and make this happen, man. I want to try.
Yeah, sure.
This is my my new go-to thing in the paranormal. is I want to experience this. I want, besides Carl coming back down from the sky because he still owes me a flight. I want to walk into one of these Zendra things, but apparently you have to be invited. Like, you could have 30, 40 people sitting in a circle, in a prayer circle or a consciousness circle doing this, but only certain people will actually get the message, I guess it's telepathically, to enter the Zendra.
And do you know where this term Zendra originates from?
It's spelled two ways, either with a Z, pardon me, America, Z, or an X. So Xendra, Zendra. And there's a number of people, mostly, I'm going to say, almost like shamanic type people who are there making it happen.
Okay. It just it sounds like it's maybe something from, someone who was channeling or something. I've heard similar terms to that, so that maybe is where it originated. But I don't know. I'll have to look into it. It's kind of fascinating how many, I almost hesitate to use the word, but how many new types of phenomena like this are starting to spring up, and it's always intriguing to me. I'll see cycles in the messages and emails and stuff that I'm getting, that all of a sudden people will be talking about, this. A while back, I want to say, a couple of months ago, maybe a few months ago, I was getting all these messages of people asking me about this phenomena where people were finding stairs in the middle of nowhere. They would just be, out in like a park or, the wilderness or whatever, and there'd be a flight of stairs. And nothing else, didn't appear to be ruins from an old building or home or anything like that, just a flight of stairs. And, it was funny. I heard it once or twice, and I thought, well, this is really odd and kind of curious, well, maybe the person didn't see the foundation of an old building or something. But then I heard it consistently from quite a few different people. And it was fascinating enough that I tried to follow up. But the aggravating thing was that no one could give me an exact location where I could just see one. And even a couple of different people I had a whole dialogue with about this. And the one guy said, the aggravating thing about this, he says, I know where it was, but I couldn't find it because I went back the next day to take pictures and I could not find the spot. So, that's a really, I don't know what this is about. It seemed to be a whole wave of these things all of a sudden. And then since then, I haven't really heard, I haven't gotten any more messages or inquiries about it.
These stairs, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. These stairs, were they supported by anything, beams, or did they just go up to the sky? Did they go up like maybe 10 or 12 stairs and just stop? What were people seeing?
The best description that I had, there were two. There's variations in the descriptions of the stairs. The curious one, the guy said that it looked like a curved staircase out of a home. He said it did appear to be old, but the steps were not rotted away or anything. And he said that, he estimated that it went up about 15 feet. He said based on his height, he didn't climb the stairs. He was afraid to climb the stairs. But he said that it was a flight of steps, a railing on each side, and that it literally looked like a set of nice steps pulled out of a home and just placed there in this small clearing in the woods. And I, the first thing I asked him, I said, did you really search to see if there was, the foundation of a building or any other signs of a building or a home having been there? And he said there was nothing, absolutely nothing. And, as I said earlier, I mean, I've wandered off into a lot of remote locations. I've found strange pieces of former buildings and so forth, but usually you can find evidence, even if it's just a faint remains of, okay, there was a foundation here. There was a small stone house here or something. But, man, this one was weird, Dave. It was really weird. The other description that was very clear was equally intriguing. It was a woman. And she said that she and her, I think it was her brother, found this set of steps. Now, she said they were stone, the ones that she found, and that they went straight up. No curve or anything to them. Just a set of stone steps that went straight up. And she said her estimate of height was around the same. She said that they were probably 15 or 20 feet up. But she didn't go up the meter. And, both of these people said, because I asked like you, are these things supported, is it not just stairs floating there in the air or something? And the guy said, no. He said, this is, the curved flight of steps, the foundation of the steps was there, the base of the steps was there. He said it was very much like if you could imagine a flight of steps taken out of a nice home and just put in this clearing in the woods. The woman said the same thing. She said that there was stones supporting these steps. And, I actually had received her account first. And my first thought was, it's probably some old stone building or something. She might be overestimating the height. But no, she said, no, these steps, they were just there by themselves. There was no sign of anything else. And she said the same thing the guy did. She said these appear to be old, as if they had been here for a long time. But they just don't go anywhere. They don't appear to go anywhere.
Any reports of anybody who actually climbed the stairs to see what was at the top, if there was some sort of portal or... No. One person told me that they put their hand on the rail and their foot on the first step and started to, they intended to climb the steps. And he said he just had this ominous feeling and he just backed away. Would you go up the stairs, Dave?
I think I probably would. I think I'd have to. Unless I got some really overwhelming, don't do this. That's just too intriguing to leave alone, Of course, after thoroughly searching the area and trying to determine, okay, what is there any potential that these steps are here because there was a building or a house or something, But it's weird. And like I said, for a couple of months, I had several of these come in. I'd say, Dave, I probably had, I don't know, a dozen, 15 people maybe. They contacted me about this. And a couple of them just asked me if I had heard about this phenomenon. So I guess it was talked about somewhere along the way on another program or something. But, it's really weird. And it's intriguing. I'd love to hear more about it. But again, I couldn't find a solid, okay, this is where one is located. Here are the coordinates, go check it out or anything like that. But again, these cycles of how stuff comes in. A few weeks ago, all of a sudden, I had a whole bunch of people writing and asking me about Chupacabra. And that was odd because I thought, well, maybe there was a recent sighting or something like that. But no, all of a sudden people were just curious about Chupacabra and, were writing them with questions, or, a couple of them had older accounts that they had seen something weird they thought was a Chupacabra.
Do you think that when somebody goes up to these stairs or see these stairs, they're almost getting some sort of premonition that something is going to happen? Because premonition, Dave, it happens.
See, you're intrigued by these stairs, just like
I am. I want to go now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. My first thought was when I heard a couple of these things, when I heard the first couple of reports, I went through a couple of different phases, because the first thing was, okay, well, these have got to be actual physical stairs that were part of some kind of, structure, and the people just aren't, they didn't look hard enough, they just didn't find the other evidence or whatever. But then, you hear this several times, and you hear someone who's very rational, this gentleman who, through a long conversation with him, it seems like he did a very thorough search to try to determine if there was anything there. And furthermore, he told me, this is an area that he'd been in before, and there was never, and as far as he knew, there was never any structure or anything in that particular area. So, then you have to question, okay, what exactly is occurring here? Are they having some kind of an experience in an altered state for some reason? Is it, is it some kind of visionary thing, or like you said, is it some kind of premonition or psychic information that's coming in that strange way? And, then of course, after hearing a number of these accounts, you start to wonder, again, when you go back to that concept of the collective consciousness, and we wonder, okay, what's affecting the group consciousness that is causing at least a portion of people to have this experience? It's pretty fascinating.
Do you believe in the whole premonition that you should basically take the message if it comes through? And I'll tell you why, Dave. The last real serious premonition that I had that scared me was in 2014. A good friend of this show, Jamie Sexton, he was living in Las Vegas. And about 6 weeks before I was going, he's like, dude, why don't we drive out to Area 51? I've been out there lots of times. Let's go to the gate. And I'm somebody who doesn't remember my dreams, unless it's some sort of alien thing. Or I had this premonition where I absolutely got into a sweaty anxiety attack because all of a sudden I figured there was one of two possibilities that were going to happen. Number one, we were going to get arrested, or number two, we were going to get killed. And I literally, about 3 weeks before the trip, was messaging him on my phone, and I said, dude, I'm not going to Area 51. I just had a really weird premonition. Don't want to go there. Don't want to check it out. It freaked me out that bad, that it just wasn't, some sort of panic attack or something along those lines. Have you ever had something like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had lots of stuff like that. Lots of premonitions. I think, having done a lot of shamanic work, you get to a point where you're, you open some of those additional facilities. And, I have to preface by saying, I was just talking to someone about this recently. You say shamanic work, and a lot of people automatically assume that involves drug use. But, there's a lot of ways on the shamanic path to reach an altered state. And, all of these processes are designed to help you achieve, heightened senses and use of your higher facilities. I think that everybody has these abilities. And, a lot of people, even in our field, a lot of people say, no, I get out of here with that stuff. But, then you get levels where it's acceptable, right? So you hear the whole story about the blue sense, that police officers develop this heightened sensitivity. You have simple experiments where, even if you don't think you have that kind of ability, you can have this experience where someone is staring at you across the room, and you turn around and there sure is. So I think it's this extra ability that if you cultivate it will, help you have those types of experiences and, the sense of danger. Everybody has their own warning signs, whether it's the hair on the back of the neck or whatnot. And in our field, those types of things are certainly very, very useful.
We only have about 2 minutes, Dave, here left in the top of the hour. I know you always make it a game time decision whether you're going into hour 3 or not. The last couple times you have. This time you haven't. We'll talk about that during the break. But, you are such a fascinating, creative person. Are there any subjects that you have not tackled yet that you want to get into?
Wow. Right, you caught me off guard on that one right off the top of my head. I don't know. There's so many aspects to this field, and, things will sort of come to my attention or I'll just decide to pursue them, for whatever reason. There's certainly a lot more I want to do, but it's mostly within the spectrum of things that I've at least touched on in the past. So, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I haven't. I don't know if there's anything I've completely left alone. Maybe some stuff I just haven't discovered yet.
I'd like you to have some really cool sightings coming up here, bro. I really would. Especially when you get up here to British Columbia and we start, looking around. And I hope you and Ross come up for a few extra days, because I'd like to take you guys up north to Quesnel to visit Mandy the Haunted Doll and maybe Barkerville, a couple places I know that are on your wish list to do. So we're going to try and arrange that. David Weatherly is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We got hour number 3 of the big show coming up right after this. Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We're lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on SpacedOutRadio.com.
There's stories, then there's the truth. Do any of us really trust the news anymore? This is Jamie Sexton, owner of Rebel Planet News. The third Thursday of every month, I appear on spacedoutradio.com to bring you the truth you deserve, without mainstream media lies or alternative media fear-mongering. We'll get to the heart of the story and deliver the truth you are seeking. So come join us here for the Rebel Planet at spacedoutradio.com.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, it's the final Friday of the month, which means it's time for the SOR Paranormal Roundtable. I'll bring in some friends. They don't know the questions. We're going to talk about the month that was of the weird and strange. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Newnan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, and you can catch us live on The Fringe FM. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Poliosis phallomyelitis? I don't even know, Bill. Poliosis phallomyitis. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's a real word, but Bill sets a password each and every night right here in the Mighty SOR. You know what? Those passwords are supposed to be on Friday. He's killing me this week. Just killing me with those passwords. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Watch us live on periscope.tv every Monday through Friday night. You can also check out our archives. They are free on our YouTube channel. We only ask that you subscribe to it. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read The Encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Author, illustrator, researcher, investigator, one of the best in the field when it comes to everything paranormal, strange and weird, from Two Crows Paranormal.blogspot.com. David Weatherly is our guest. David comes in every 2 months, and his next appearance, if we can schedule it, will be June 28th. We love having David on this show. Dave, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
I have a couple questions from Angel, who is longtime listener, but the first time she's actually watching us on Periscope. So we say thank you, Angel, for doing that. She wanted to know about skinwalkers. Do you believe they're real? What do you think they are?
Oh, I absolutely believe they're real. That is a whole, we can talk about this a little. Skinwalkers, first of all, those not familiar with the term, Skinwalker comes primarily from the Dene people of the Southwest, that is the Navajo. And the term designates someone who practices an evil form of magic that allows them to shapeshift. Skinwalking literally comes from the idea that these practitioners can steal a skin and use it to transform. So the most common depictions or reports you hear involve someone who's able to shift into the form of a coyote or a wolf or a dog because they have the pelt from that animal. Now, among the Dene, the concept of skinwalkers, it kind of borders into territory that's similar to the jinn, because there's a wide range of powers attributed to skinwalkers. And the Navajo themselves, they won't even use the term. With the rare exception of some of the more modern researchers, particularly guys like the Navajo Rangers, who are trying to bring some attention to paranormal activity on the reservation, traditional Navajo, they won't talk about these things. And certainly not to an outsider, but not even to, their own fellow tribal members, because the belief is that merely mentioning skinwalkers attracts their attention, and that is not something you want to do. The Navajos consider these people witches, and you have to take away the concept of the European witch in order to understand that. In the Navajo belief system, these witches are people who are practicing black magic. They go through a very defined set of rituals and initiations in order to become a skinwalker. And these ceremonies and the things they have to do are pretty gruesome. One of the culminations of the process is that they must kill a family member, preferably a child, the younger the better, in order to gain their powers. And, what you get are a wide range of reports of these entities, anywhere from it being, essentially a negative medicine man or worker who is, cursing people and things like that, all the way to reports of people seeing a humanoid that is able to shift its form from something that is fully human into something that is partially human or completely animal. And I don't know if I've ever told this account. I saw something that fits the description of a skinwalker. Many years ago, I was driving in an area of the reservation that, of course, you're not supposed to drive at night. You know, even the natives say stay away from this area at night. And of course, I was driving it at night. I was driving a moving truck, and I was traveling along at a good pace. It was late at night, and I was probably going, like 45 or something through this area. It's pitch black out there. And, as I'm driving, Dave, I catch something out of my peripheral vision, just on the side of the road that's kind of hitting the, reflection from the lights and so forth. And I could tell it was an animal. And, that's not unusual because there's a lot of coyotes out there. There's occasionally a wolf, and wild dogs. And, as I'm driving, I'm kind of seeing this thing. I'm glancing over as I can to keep my eye on it. And I noticed that it starts sort of coming, towards the truck into the road. And I was getting concerned that this thing was going to suddenly dart across the road in front of me and cause me a wreck. So, simple solution, I just speed up a little bit. But this thing kept pace. And it kept getting close to the truck on my side. And, as I sped up, this thing continued to keep pace. So, I pushed it up to, 45 to 50, and I just kept giving this big truck more gas. And this thing was now sort of making runs at the cab of the truck, at the driver's door. And I was getting really concerned. I still assumed it was an animal at this point. It was on all fours. I sped up more, and Dave, this thing suddenly went from running on all fours to running bipedally. It went up on two legs and was running like a human, and it was still keeping pace with the freaking truck. And I tell you, there's the moment, the hair on the back of my neck sure went up, and I knew in that moment, I knew exactly what it was. I've delved into a lot of, Native American lore. I've been fortunate to be able to be friends with various natives and hear some stories that a lot of people don't get to hear. And this was really something. I got the truck up to about 60. This thing was still keeping pace with the truck, and I was coming up on a curve. I knew I'd have to slow down. And what happened was, as I started to slow down, put the brakes on to go around this curve, this thing sort of went off the road and onto these rocks, where it just sort of, jumped up these rocks and over them and disappeared. So I tell you, man, I went back to that spot a couple times, and I just, I thought about that sighting so many times. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in my life, hands down. And, I've talked to the Navajo Rangers and some other, traditionals that are open about this stuff about it. And they're all like, oh, it's a skinwalker, and I learned later on, from a Navajo friend that, right around that time there, all the Navajos said that there's a group of skinwalkers in operating in a canyon right there close to where you had that sighting. So, that's probably what you encountered. They were going, because these guys purportedly have these areas. A reservation is pretty big and, sparsely populated essentially. So there's areas out there, that are just very remote. And, even driving through the reservation at night, it's that alone is just kind of a spooky experience, because it's, there's nothing out there in a lot of that territory.
Elizabeth Anglin, who used to host our Sunday show, she had the same type of experience where a skinwalker was on all fours chasing them down the road, and the faster they got in the vehicle, the faster they went, the faster this creature was running. And eventually it was like when they pulled out of the reservation area, that's when the creature kind of stopped. And she said it was the scariest, eeriest thing that's ever happened to her. And you know, those stories just give me goosebumps, because you have to think about it, Dave. For somebody to want to become a skinwalker and the rituals that they have to perform, they cannot have a soul. They cannot have any sort of motivation or drive or love for any human being whatsoever. I mean, if they are more concerned about some sort of elusive and egregious immortality, Dave.
Well, and it's not, I mean, it's not just that. It's more about, you know, power and greed. And of course, you know, the Navajos place a lot of emphasis on, you know, keeping everything in balance. And that obviously is very far out of balance. And it is a very dark path. And you would have to be a very disturbed individual to go through some of the things in order to, you know, even possibly achieve the powers that they talk about. But there's, you know, I've seen some weird things. I mean, I was, one of the things that the skinwalkers are purportedly able to do is that they have a small reed or this, you know, this little tube they use as a blowgun, and they can shoot these bone darts into a person that cause sickness. And I was very privileged to be part of a ceremony. I wasn't able to be part of all of the ceremony, but I was there for a portion of a ceremony that involved a cure that was being done on someone who was infected with a sickness that had been caused by a skinwalker. And one of these guys showed me what came out of this man, and it was this tiny sliver that was bone. You know, it was literally bone. And you know, they coat these things. Of course, it's considered magic, but you know, likely it's coated with some kind of a toxin, and it causes an illness in the person. And you know, by some accounts, it can lead to death. But man, I tell you, I so wished I you know, of course, I made hints and you know, asked somebody directly, you know, if there was any chance I could take this thing and get it analyzed. And of course, that wasn't going to happen. But it's still, you know, it's fascinating nonetheless. And this is, again, it's one of the many things, one of the many powers, if you will, that are attributed to skinwalkers. One of the creepier things that is attributed to skinwalkers is that, as I said earlier, they are able to shapeshift into the form of the creature whose skin they have stolen or taken. Now think about that for a moment and understand that that's not limited to animal form. They could steal the skin of another human whose place they wanted to take.
So do you think then that there are maybe some of these missing people who go around on reservations, and even up here in Canada we have had a high concentration of First Nations women go missing all around the country, heavily in northern British Columbia, a couple hours north of me. Do you think a lot of these skinwalkers are maybe taking these people to advance their own greed in life?
You know, it's hard to say. I mean, if we look at the Navajo Nation alone, it's a fascinating place. It's so many intriguing things about that nation. First of all, we're talking about 27,000, almost 28,000 square miles. Okay, and within that territory, there's only about 300,000 people, and I'm using round numbers, but it's in that neighborhood for both those figures. That's a pretty sparse population. It's the largest Native American reservation. It is, that's larger than a lot of states. And when you travel across the reservation, there are some areas, I mean, you feel so much like you're in another world. So it's very conceivable that some of these disappearances, are due to these people practicing these strange rites and rituals. And whether or not they're actually gaining power from this stuff or not, the point is that they believe they are. And they're acting on these ancient concepts and rituals that they believe will give them these powers and these abilities. So, they're going to do some dreadful things that they need to in order to get what they want. And, the Skinwalker mythos, if you will, it kind of centers around the Dene, but some of the neighboring tribes have similar stories. The Apache to the south have different legends of skinwalkers. The Utes to the north, they have stories of skinwalkers. And there's variations, of course. The Utes, for instance, believe that they were cursed by the Navajos during one of the periods when the two tribes were at war, and that's why they're plagued by skinwalkers. But really, you go outside of that, the skinwalking concept is very unique to the Southwest. However, when you do go outside of that, you get variations on it. You go to the north, you get the Wendigo, and different variations among different tribes. But most tribal cultures, they do have some concept of this idea that a person can choose to walk a darker path and gain powers, and it usually involves doing something that breaking all the rules, so to speak, and murdering or doing things that are taboo as far as the tribe is concerned to gain those powers. So we're dealing with different cultures and different mindsets, and it's hard sometimes for people to wrap their minds around this idea that, come on, you really think somebody would go kill a child because they think they're going to get the ability to shapeshift? Well, yeah, some people are going to try to do these things. It's just, it's, again, you have to shift your thinking and understand that this is a core belief that some of these people have.
Man Olive wants to know then, David, what you think is actually happening or happened at the Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, this almost comes full circle to stuff we were talking about in the first part of the show. Skinwalker Ranch is in the Uinta Basin, and this is a region that itself is an area of high strangeness. A lot of people, there's so much talk about Skinwalker Ranch itself because that was sort of the center of known activity and reports, because Bigelow bought the property, and of course the book that Knapp and Kellier wrote, with all the stuff that they recounted in there, which really is only the tip of the iceberg. And I can tell you that the entire Uinta Basin is an area of high activity. I think I know it's one of these areas that is a concentration of high strangeness. And that means that there are just a crazy number of reports of UFOs, of haunted locations, of cryptids. I've heard so many reports from that region, stuff that just never gets published or listed anywhere. It's a very rural community. And, because of that, there's a certain amount of reserve that many of the people have to talk to too many people outside of the community. But I think we're back to this concept of an area where there are portals, where there are openings, where things can come through. Some of the reports of people, both from the ranch itself and from surrounding area, they talk about seeing things open up. There's been descriptions of people seeing what they described as a window opening at night in the sky. But when this opened on the other side, it was daytime. So, imagine a hole in the night sky that on the other side is daytime. And, that speaks to some kind of weird portal type of stuff going on to me. You hear some of these reports of these creatures that just suddenly show up and then, they vanish in a heartbeat, or they just, they seem to go into nothingness. The whole story, of course, of the purported bulletproof wolf that is talked about in Hunt for the Skinwalker, involves this large wolf that the family chased down, and they followed its tracks, which all of a sudden just stopped. This tracks in the mud, and they just stopped. There's nowhere for this creature to have gone, but it's gone. So, this is one of those regions, and there's a lot of them around the world. The Superstition Mountains in Arizona, that's another region like this. It's just that, Skinwalker Ranch got a lot of publicity because of the book, of course. And, since then, it's just been a point of fascination for a lot of people. And, of course, Bigelow, he set NIDS up at the ranch in order to study this phenomena. So it was an area that had scientific observers for a period of time, and they too experienced a lot of strange things that they just can't explain.
We had back in January John Alexander, who is one of Robert Bigelow's right-hand men, who worked at the Skinwalker Ranch. Now, as much as he wouldn't go into detail about it, he said everything we have heard about Skinwalker Ranch and what happened there is true. Yet when you ask him for details, he's like, I didn't see anything. That's not for me to discuss. He was very vague about it. And I found that disappointing because in one side of his mouth, he was saying it's all true. On the other side, he's not giving any detail as to what was really heard. Why do you think, then, there was such secrecy about what was going on when this entire area has, even to this day, has taken on a real cult-like following, Dave?
Yeah, it has. There's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, Bigelow obviously has a fascination for, these types of activity. He wants answers. He wants to study it, and he has the resources to do so. He, somewhere along the way, agreed that this book could be published. And, I haven't heard this personally from him, so I don't know, but I've heard tell that he regretted the decision to allow Hunt for the Skinwalker to be published, because let's face it, that's really what caused the attraction to the area. Outside of it, it wasn't widely known that was an area, that type of activity. So people regionally knew it. There were people who investigated it before Bigelow bought the ranch. There were areas in the Uinta Basin itself that had been investigated. But that book, I mean, it's a fascinating book. For anybody who hasn't read it, it's a heck of a read. It's a classic at this point. And the stuff that happens in there, you're going to walk away from reading that book thinking, okay, this is all BS. Or you're going to walk away from it thinking, oh my gosh, this area is just incredible. This concentration of activity. And I can tell you that the stuff that's in the book is just the tip of the iceberg of what goes on in that region. But in the ensuing years, I think you've had this struggle where, Bigelow, whoever, kind of changed their mind and said, no, we don't want all this public. We want to keep it private so we can study it. And that all that did was just agitate the situation further and attract people all the more. And of course, then you had this whole legend, almost like Area 51, except it's not officially government controlled, right? You had this whole legend grow up about how, they've got 24/7 security on Skinwalker Ranch. You get run off, there's guards, there's cameras and everything else. Researchers just take that as a challenge, like, okay, well, what are they going to do to me? I'm going to sneak on there and see what I can find. And, there's lots of stories of people who have snuck on the property and had bizarre experiences. So, but by trying to lock it down more and more over the years, they just created more of a fascination for the place.
I just find it one of those places I'm not sure I would even want to go. I mean, I'll do a Zendra and go meet aliens, but I don't know if I want to go to the Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, there's just way too much strange there, and it seems to be evil strange. Let's move on to Angel's next question here. She is wondering about the Watchers. Have you looked into the Watchers at all? Because this is a term that, although it's not relatively new, it seems to be gaining a lot of popularity recently, Dave.
Well, it's used in a few different contexts. Are you talking about Watchers as in the connection to the Nephilim?
I thought I would be using it, me personally, more in, the alien terms. Apparently there's a bunch of alien watchers, and then there's paranormal. Like, I understand with where you're going with that, but I think it all depends really in what you truly believe, correct?
Yeah. It's, some of the, some of the alien theorists are using that a lot in context of, this idea that there's a race living on a planet, just outside of a solar system that's watching our development and so forth. I haven't delved into it a whole lot. It just hasn't intrigued me to that degree. A friend of mine, L.A. Marzulli, I know, has started a series, called The Watcher Files. I think that's what he's calling that. Delving into some of this stuff. So I don't know, there's such a conglomeration of these concepts that are mixing together the alien idea with the concept of the Nephilim and these, races that are you get, what I'm trying to say, you get this weird crossover between all of the alien stuff and the whole biblical references to, the Lucifer and his minions and the Nephilim, and it's fascinating territory. It's not something I've delved into extensively at this point. I've looked into the Nephilim stuff some because of the legends of giants. And again, coming back around full circle to what we were talking about earlier, all these legends of giants in the United States, from Lovelock Cave out to the mounds in the Northeast and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, that's, about what I can say on that, I guess.
What about these stories, Dave, coming out of Afghanistan from a lot of soldiers and former soldiers saying that they were in spec op type units that were out to kill these Nephilim that are still apparently patrolling the mountains around Afghanistan? Do you buy that story, or do you or do you think it's just legend?
Man, that's one of those where I just kind of, I just don't know at this point. I know that Afghanistan, there's a lot of rugged territory there. There are a number of these accounts that have come out. I spoke to one fellow. It was actually a conversation online, so I wasn't able to get him on the phone. But he professed to have seen one of these conflicts between some Western soldiers and a giant humanoid that was living in a cave. So I just don't know. All of this kind of stuff, there's so many of these things that start springing up, particularly with the internet, and they reach a point, I believe, where they either prove to be something with a lot of substance, or they show themselves eventually to be purely, a modern urban legend. And I don't think we've reached sort of the point of proof or not on these particular stories. What I mean by that is, of course, the black-eyed children. A lot of people say that, well, that's just an internet myth and an urban legend that was created online. Well, in the early days, when these accounts first started showing up online, I thought that myself. I thought, well, okay, I want to watch this and see what happens. Because there were some intriguing stories, and aside from Brian Bethel, several of the best accounts were anonymous. Now, there's nothing wrong with that to a degree, because, some of these people may have good reason for being anonymous with their reports. But there has to be a breaking point at some time, right? Or you just have to discount it all. The black-eyed children encounters, they reached a point where there were so many people reporting these things, and there were finally people who were able and willing to openly talk about it and say, yes, I've seen one of these things. This is what happened. And Brian Bethel resurfaced and has, openly talked about his encounter. So, now you have so many people coming to the forefront. It gives you something else to kind of dig into and look at and examine. With the giant accounts out of Afghanistan at this point, thinking, wow, this is really fascinating and there could be something to it, but I've yet to find a soldier that'll personally sit down with me and, recount his story and let me ask him questions and so forth. I think they're pretty fascinating tales. And hey, it's very possible Afghanistan is rugged territory, and, there's a lot we don't know about that country, but I don't know.
I know one researcher, I think you know him, Jody Cook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jody was the one where he actually had a soldier come up to him after hearing Jody on this show and one of our replays on YouTube, and actually brought the story about the Nephilim up to him as well. So I think it's something that could be out there, but I got a very good friend of mine who served special ops in Afghanistan. He did 4 tours over there, and he had never even heard of it. And he is going to ask around to some of his buddies that he knows who are in different units to see if they had heard of anything. And that's the way I'm going to test it out, because I'm just not sure. If this is still real.
Yeah. The stuff involving military people, it's always fascinating for a number of reasons. And I find that it's also one of the things that gets into territory where you can often quickly discount it if you get details, and it is a hoax. So what'll happen is, I've had people come to me with purported military background and this and that, and they'll talk about a particular experience, and I'll ask them details. What unit was that? What action? When were you deployed? Just standard questions that are mixed in with questions about the about the incident. But those are all things that are verifiable. And if you can go back and find out, okay, this unit was indeed deployed to Iraq at this time, it's a genuine unit. It was part of, whatever, then okay, well, this guy is most likely genuine because he got everything right. Everything seems to be valid. So then you take it to the next level. But I've had a lot of people try to BS me with stuff like that, saying, well, I served in such and such and this, and you find out, well, that unit was home in Texas when this guy claims, this happened in Desert Storm or whatever. So, again, the military stuff is very intriguing. And of course, then you're also getting into territory of, here you've got people that are in a situation where their very lives depend on observation and being aware of their environment and what's going on. So, you can really take that to the bank if this guy is being honest and his information is valid and he's telling you what he experienced. It can be a pretty impressive account.
Let's get to Gloria's question. She says, David, I've become obsessed with owls and possible connections to UFOs. Have you ever heard of such a thing, and what do you believe about this?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Have you had Mike on your show yet?
Mike Clellan? No.
Clellan? Yeah. Oh, you haven't?
No, I have to.
Yeah. I'll reach out to him. He's a friend of mine. You'll have to have Mike on the show. He has, this guy can talk about this stuff all night, literally. He has really thoroughly studied it. And I'll tell you, it's one of those things that, again, these weird synchronicities. I met Mike years ago at a UFO conference in Phoenix. And got to know him some, and at one point, he asked me if I had any owl stories, and I thought about it for a minute. I said, "Yeah, I've got a few," and he started working on his book. I can remember when he sent me the first draft of his initial paper on this whole concept of owls and UFOs, and I had some weird things happen. Weird synchronicities happen just by communicating with Mike about this whole topic. I was sitting in my office at the time. It was on the second floor of a home, and it was the middle of the night. And I'm trying to remember the exact details. I think I had just opened his document or something on owls. And sure enough, this owl showed up at my window. So, a lot of weird things. And, of course, there are many sightings of many encounters with aliens that people remember owls, has a screen memory. But, Mike, he wanted to kind of dig into not just that, but go beyond that and into the whole concept of how alien owls are, in a sense, and how many similarities there are, and so forth. So, I'll just kind of leave it at that, because I really think you should have him on the show to go into the topic in depth. It really deserves a lot more. Basically, yeah, I've got a few stories, and there are some interesting things that have come up in conjunction with owls. I've interviewed witnesses, of course, that start to have memories of a UFO, and then they start to have these strange memories of owls. There's a woman I interviewed whose child kept drawing owls, and the woman couldn't understand why. But then the woman herself started having these memories come back of her and her child being in a car and seeing a UFO. And, the child kept insisting that that's when the owls came. So it's really strange. It's, it's potentially something that this other intelligence is using, has a screen memory, because it's a genuine recognized animal that people would accept. But I tell you, one thing that's really fascinating to me about that topic is that there are a few variations in the Southwest. I've had a number of reports of people seeing giant jackrabbits.
Yeah, like the 4 foot ones or something like that, right?
Yeah. So, we're talking about jackrabbits the size of these gray aliens. So, that's a curious one. But again, this may be it may be a regional thing because, of course, in the Southwest, we get a lot of rabbits, and these giant jackrabbits or these very large jackrabbits out at night. They're not 4 feet tall, but suddenly people are reporting seeing, wow, well, I pulled up in my driveway and I couldn't pull the car all the way in because there was a very large jackrabbit in the driveway, and it was looking over the hood of my car. And okay, well, how tall do you think this rabbit was? 4 or 5 feet. Okay, did you think that was normal at the time? I didn't really think about it at the time. I thought it was just a big rabbit. So, wow. It's really strange, intense stuff, and it certainly the rabbit thing. I'd love to have more of those accounts and really kind of examine that. But back around to the owls, Mike has collected some just incredible accounts, and it borders into this area. Mike has I don't know if he still does it or not. He has a podcast. He did a podcast for a long time, and I was on his show at one point, and we got into talking about the whole shamanic aspect of some of this stuff. And, what I find for some of these people that have experienced UFOs and abductions, it starts bordering into the territory of the shamanic process. And it's almost like a version of a shamanic initiation, if you will, at times. Fascinating stuff to delve into. I mean, we could easily do, a couple of hours on this.
Could any of these reports be slated, and I realize they've been done over time, but there's also been in the United States some, allowance of allowing kangaroos into the wilderness now. I know it's happening in the North Midwest. I don't know why they're doing it, but they're introducing kangaroos in there. Have you checked into that, whether maybe people are not seeing rabbits, but maybe kangaroos or wallabies?
Yeah, there's, you get into cryptid reports, and there are what they term phantom kangaroos. There have been some reports here and there, and essentially out-of-place animals. So, these kangaroos, there's been a few incidents where they escape from zoos or whatnot and have gotten loose in different areas. There's a whole colony of wallabies, for instance, in England. A lot of people don't even realize that. But no, the rabbit reports, the people are very clear in their minds that what they're seeing are rabbits, because they have seen, rabbits on a regular basis living where they do. And they're comfortable with being positive that what they've seen is a rabbit. The movements, when they report the movements, the animals move like a rabbit. And, a kangaroo, of course, has a very distinctive type of movement that's very different from a rabbit. So I don't think that's what's happening in these cases. I really don't. And, I think that there's something else going on. And the owl thing, when you come back around to that, you've got this whole concept that a lot of tribal cultures have some pretty ominous ideas about what the owl represents. To some native cultures, hearing an owl signals someone's death. To the Apaches, the whole tradition, their whole creation story involves a set of monsters that their cultural hero has to battle. And one of those monsters is called the Owl Man Giant. And it literally is a giant owl. So, we get this really curious sort of opposition with the idea of the owl because, again, a lot of the native cultures have a negative view of it, whereas, a lot of early European Celtic belief systems attributed it to wisdom. So you've got, for instance, Athena had an owl as a symbol. Some of the Celtic gods, the owl was a symbol. And that's where you get these terms, the wise old owl, and, some of the cartoon depictions of the owl being all knowledgeable and so forth. And I find that fascinating because, clearly in North America, we have both influences. We have the core Native American belief that was already here, and then the Europeans that came in and brought this opposing belief about owls. So there's a lot of people with mixed blood. There's a lot of people, for instance, with Cherokee heritage that have alien or UFO encounters. So, what's their mindset on the concept of the owl and what it represents to them? Why is that what's being plucked out? There's dozens of animals that could be used. Why the owl in particular? I think that question is fascinating. Obviously, we don't have an answer, but it's something that's very intriguing, just because of the fact that it's used so extensively. If it is indeed, something alien or otherworldly that's using that image, it has been very consistent because, man, these stories go back a lot of years of these strange encounters with these owls. I think even Whitley Strieber, I believe, in one of his early encounters talked about an owl, believing that what he saw was an owl, and then he later learned that it was, or realized that it was an alien gray.
Cousin Gary over on Periscope is asking, and literally, he's my cousin, do you believe there is some type of relativity between Chupacabra and, what's the other creature here? And a Skinwalker?
No. Mm-mm. And Chupacabra, the Chupacabra stuff is fascinating. Like I said, for some reason, a week or two ago, all of a sudden I got flooded with questions about Chupacabra. There's a couple of versions of the Chupacabra, because you've got the one that showed up in Puerto Rico, which was kind of the original Chupacabra in the 1990s, mid-1990s. And the depiction of that thing, man, it's a lot creepier than the other ones. It's it's this bipedal figure with these large black eyes, kind of like the alien grays, but it's more sort of lizard-like in appearance. It's sort of it was often depicted with small forearms and these spikes that go down its back. And then, you have this whole rash of sightings and encounters in Puerto Rico in the 90s. And then you kind of fast forward, and what you get is these Chupacabras that show up in the Southwest. Texas had an incredible number of these reports. And all of a sudden it's a canid. And it's, it's reported to have this thick hide, hairless, and this weird loping gait. There's an incredible piece of footage that was captured by a dash camera from a county sheriff or something in Texas. I'm sure it's still online. And they watched one of these things, drove behind it as it was running down the road. And, of course, there was the carcass of one that was found in southern Texas. And there's been a lot of reports of these things. And that appears to be some kind of genuine animal that is, a weird hybrid that has sprung up, at least in southern Texas. But again, it's a fascinating thing because it's sort of melded with a lot of cultural beliefs about these, weird blood-sucking creatures that show up and slaughter farm animals and so forth just to steal their blood, like the classic vampire bat.
We're down to our last 4 minutes here with you tonight, man. What a fast show. Absolutely fast show. Why is it always so fast when you're on, man? I know that sounds whining. I know that sounds, but I'm complaining about this, Dave, because literally I could talk to you about this stuff all night, and I know our audience would absolutely love being able to talk to you or hear you speak a hell of a lot more than myself here. You know, where do you take it, man? I know I asked you this earlier, but where do you take it? Like, is this just... have you hit the epitome of what you want to do yet, Dave?
No, not at all. Just going to keep going, man. You know, I have such a passion for this stuff, and it's, you know, I can't get enough of it personally. So, you know, I'm just going to keep doing what I do, and, you know, I'll talk when people want to listen, and you know, I'll keep writing, and just primarily just keep researching and investigating, because that's just, you know, it's kind of my personal passion and quest, and it's one of those paths that I think, you know, I think if you're really truly committed to it, you just take it with you, you know, until you're done here on this planet, I guess, because you know, everything I find, every time I uncover an answer, it leads to another dozen questions. And that's part of what's fascinating about it, sometimes frustrating about it, but it never gets old.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Because just when you think you've found it all, there always happens to be one more oddity to add to the mystery, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's like... in terms of things like evidence, if you will, you know, you can capture something that is just incredible, and at the same time you think, okay, this is freaking incredible, but you know, what does it mean? How can I, you know, how can I explain this? You know, it validates something, but it raises more questions at the same time.
David, give a shout out to your website, your books, where people can pick them up.
Amazon.com is the best place. The revised edition of Black Eyed Children is on there, as well as my other books. You can just click into you click on my name, you'll find the author's page. It has a bunch of stuff listed on there. Wood Knots Volume 3 should be out probably within 2 to 3 weeks, and that is that beautiful cover from Sam Sharon. A lot of other stuff coming along in the pipeline. Two Crows Paranormal.blogspot.com. It hasn't been updated a whole lot just because I've been so busy, but there are hot links on there for some of the other stuff. The DVDs from Society of the Supernatural, a new one of those came out just a few weeks ago. It's on a haunted location in Mississippi that we did, called The House of the Haunted Fields. Very intense investigation. It's a great DVD. And oh man, so much more stuff coming this year. I just kind of have stuff coming out nonstop, so I'm sure we'll be talking more.
For sure, my friend. You hold on. I'm going to wrap this thing up quickly. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Tomorrow night on the program, we have the SOR Paranormal Roundtable. I know Giordano is in, Tessa's in. We're waiting to hear from Roop and the Preacher to join us as well. It's going to be a fun show. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I want to say a big thanks once again to David Weatherly, who comes on every second month on Spaced Out Radio. His next appearance, pending his schedule, will be June 28th. That's a Thursday night as well. Don't forget David's website, twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com. And all his books can be found on Amazon. Make sure you check them out. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who was listening in at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. A special shout out to everybody on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, in the Spreaker chat room. All of you on Periscope, thank you so much. Sorry about our technical glitch that we had there. And of course, the veterans in the SOR Space Travelers Club. You guys are the best. You helped us get to this spot where we were today and where we are going tomorrow. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Good night.
Totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching.